and welcome to this panel discussion about full-day kindergarten. I'm Jennifer Blake, the Director of Communications. This panel discussion is structured to address many of the questions and concerns raised by our community as the district explores the possibility of full-day kindergarten. I would like to take the opportunity to remind the community that the district is currently in a period of study and investigation about whether or not to pursue full-day kindergarten for implementation in the 2019-2020 school year. The period between now and February is reserved for the thoughtful consideration of a variety of factors, many of which will be addressed in this forum. 4 forums like this were offered to the community. In addition, a portion of our website provides resources and information even beyond what you will hear in this forum. Please visit www.gvsd/FDK for more information. All that said, I'd like to welcome our panel members and ask them to please introduce themselves. If we could begin with Mrs. Beck.
Sure, I'm Tricia Beck, Director of Teaching and Learning.
Stephen O'Toole, Assistant Superintendent for Educational Services.
Regina Speaker-Polovinsky, Superintendent.
Chuck Linderman, the Business Administrator.
Joanna Wexler, Director of Pupil Services.
Thank you all for joining us today. Let's begin with the superintendent. Dr. Speaker-Polovinsky, could you please talk with us a little bit about the timing of this consideration? In other words, why is the district considering a full-day kindergarten program now, and when would that change from a half-day program be implemented?
Absolutely. The conversation actually started about approximately 2 years ago with a feasibility study financially to look at the potential for full-day kindergarten. At that time, the cost for full-day kindergarten was estimated to be approximately $810,000. After that initial feasibility study, we moved on. We had the redistricting at the elementary level, and the plan then was included in the comprehensive planning process, which started last school year throughout multiple meetings with community members and representatives from each of our schools to look at where the district is going in all areas of education for a 3-year period of 2019 through 2021. Through that process, strategies are identified that will be implemented or explored for that 3-year period. The plan then is put on public review for a month, voted on, and submitted to PDE for the implementation period. In that plan, one of the strategies that was identified was the exploration of full-day kindergarten, which would be implemented in 2019. During the public review process, a response was received from the community that if that is the plan to explore full-day kindergarten for a 3-year period, or to actually make a decision and either implement or not. When that public comment was received and heard by the board, the directive was then given to the administration to fully explore the possibility to either implement in 2019 or make a decision not to implement. And this is a critical time for us now as our enrollment is growing. So that decision will be made in February to either implement full-day kindergarten moving forward or to continue with our half-day programming as we explore our increased enrollment. And we will have other areas that we will be focusing on, beginning with the feasibility study for reconfiguration or addition of new buildings.
So you mentioned that there is some work planned for the possible reconfiguration or building of new buildings. What's the cause of that?
As most can tell, driving through any of our communities, our community and our school district is growing in population. With that, our enrollment projections are also increasing. So the board authorized request for qualifications to architects, and that will be beginning in the spring and will really catapult much planning and consideration starting next school year. So it would be looking at potentially the need for a new building, looking at our current facilities and the capacity of those buildings, possibly grade reconfiguration, but it will start for this request for qualifications with the architects to look at what we have currently, and then making plans moving forward, which will really tie up a majority of our resources financially as well as human to make sure we're taking a lot of time to make thoughtful considerations for that next move. So the time is now for us to do a thorough evaluation and investigation on full-day kindergarten.
Great. Dr. Speaker Polubinski referenced growth in our district. We're seeing increased enrollments in our schools. So, Mr. Linderman, if we think about implementing a full-day kindergarten program, can our current buildings accommodate that program, and would there be kindergarten classrooms in every elementary school?
Well, that's a good question. Currently, our elementary schools have 17 designed kindergarten classrooms available for use. As of today, we use 10 of them. We also use 4 additional classrooms for our all-day care program that's provided by Warwick. So we have a few classrooms. We do anticipate, based on the projections, that we would need 14 classrooms to be used next year for full-day kindergarten if it's approved. So we do anticipate that, based on the projections and the numbers, that there would be adequate space in each building to house the kindergartners in their home building.
So while we acknowledge that there is space available, we've also talked about costs associated with a full-day program. Can you outline the new costs associated and how those costs might impact the taxpayer in Great Valley?
Well, as Dr. Speaker Polubinski indicated, the cost several years ago was over $800,000 to implement the full-day kindergarten program, and that comes from factors of additional staffing and things like that. Things have changed over the past 3 or 4 years. Several years ago, as many as 3 or 4 years ago, we used to average about 2 to 3 kindergartners would go to our charter schools, which we pay the students to go to the charter schools. We pay a tuition rate for a regular kindergarten student of $15,771. This year, for the first time, we went into double digits. We have 18 kindergarten students. Last year we had 9. Year before that it was 5. So we've been growing in our kindergarten population at the charter schools. And we see them go to the charter schools for a year and then come to our school in first grade because of the full-day component that the charter schools have available. So calculating the savings from the charter schools that we anticipate if we have the same number of students coming back to our schools from the charter schools, we now anticipate that the estimated cost to be just over $400,000. And looking at the long-range projections of the number of students, parents using the charter schools for kindergarten, it's not hard to see and wouldn't be a big leap in assumptions to see that in not too many years down the road, this cost for full-day kindergarten could actually be a moot point and maybe even be a savings in the very long term.
Great. So since we're acknowledging that the implementation of a full-day program does come with a cost, Dr. Speaker Polubinski, some in our community have asked if there's research to support that a full-day program is in fact beneficial for students. In other words, is it not just a taxpayer-funded daycare option?
That's also a great question. The motivation or the benefit by having a much more consistently provided beginning year experience for our earliest learners, which are our kindergarten students, would be to provide that foundational experience for all students in kindergarten and then moving into first grade. As Mr. Linderman had mentioned, we have a number of students who receive education outside of our district in kindergarten for various reasons and then move back in first grade. So first grade becomes very disparate as far as experiences and skills for those early learners. Our goal would be to provide a foundational base that we can count on and then look at the expectations for first grade and then moving forward to the expectations for second grade, with the overall benefit of making a goal for our students by the end of second grade that all students would be entering third grade reading to learn, which is the expectation with our third grade learners. That said, I think it is very important to identify that our current half-day programming is exceptionally well done. Our students really get a great foundation. What is oftentimes an area of concern for our kindergarten teachers as well as some of our parents is the opportunity to apply those skills that they're learning academically. So it's the gift of time that's added to that full day, so that is the benefit. Some of the longitudinal research studies that are provided and are well documented compare half-day programming with full-day programming, and oftentimes those programs are provided to the same group of students. So in that case, you are comparing the experience half-day students then going into first grade with their peers that are in full-day experiences going into first grade. When you have the diversity, which is what we currently have in Great Valley, bringing together those first graders with that disparity disallows the opportunity for the system to then adjust the curriculum, because you don't want to put students who have half-day experiences at a disadvantage, or those students who have differing experiences, even if it's a full-day program. So our goal would be to provide the foundational consistency in full-day kindergarten to bring as many of our students that are Great Valley residents to kindergarten, providing that consistent framework, and then adjust our first grade expectations, our second grade expectations, so that by third grade, we would have the same metric across.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Wexler, from a special education early intervention perspective, what opportunities might a full-day program provide for students?
So similar to what was just mentioned around the gift of time, one of the challenges we do see when we have students transitioning from early intervention services is that they may come to the district with recommendation for related services such as occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech and language services, or maybe social skills instruction. And what often happens is we find a challenge having to pull students from their 2.5-2-hour and 40-minute day for those related services. So if we had the full day, it would allow us to perhaps push those services into the classroom, gives rather than relying upon pulling out and missing academic instruction, and additionally, maybe the opportunity to practice those skills in a more authentic way during specific types of play situations or even academic situations during that full day. Right now, we do offer some full day programs, but it is for students that have significant need and the spaces there are limited, so we believe that this would allow greater opportunity for students that transition in with those types of services.
Great, thank you. Dr. Speaker Polubinski, some of the questions being asked by our community relate to class size and about support for students in the classroom. So could you just talk with us a little bit about class size expectations and whether or not those guidelines would change, and then whether or not kindergarten teachers would have support in the classroom?
Absolutely. Our class size guidelines were established, and they will not be adjusted. They're not slated to be adjusted at this time, and the class size guidelines are 18 to 22 for kindergarten. That will stay as it has been. And again, they're guidelines, so it is the range in which our class sizes are staffed at this point. As far as support in the classroom, that is dependent upon the needs of the classroom. So certainly, in some of our classes, aid support is available or additional support is available, and that would be dependent upon the needs of the students. And that can be very fluid and fluctuating as the needs of students change.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about the actual structure of the day for our full-day kindergarten students. Dr. O'Toole, can you tell us what the day might look like, specifically how it might differ from what we see in first or even second grade, and then whether or not all students would participate in a full-day program or if that would be an option?
Sure. So to address that first, or the last question you asked, this would be for all students. So it would not be an option for students to have a half-day kindergarten experience and some students to have a full day. So it would be for all students. Specifically with regards to the schedule and what students would experience during the day, that's something that we're still working on with our building principals and our kindergarten teachers, and we can use our current full-day program as a model. What we would envision seeing is similar to what currently happens. Our students in kindergarten in the full-day program have a morning recess and afternoon recess, some time after lunch that they experience. A break in the day, and so we would anticipate that. All students would have a 45-minute special that they would participate in, and those specials are art, music, STEAM, and physical education. And so we would see that students would have those similar experiences. The start time would be 8:55, and students would be dismissed at 3:38, as our other students in grades 1 through 5 see as well. When we talk about the schedule in and of itself and what we're looking at as students are in the classroom, there are going to be other opportunities for students to have experiences such as developmental play and those aspects that will break up the day, in addition to academic subjects that would be embedded in those developmental play experiences. So we do see that envision right now that the schedule would be similar to that.
Okay, you referenced a current full-day program. Could you just clarify for those who are watching what you meant by that in case
Sure.
they're not aware?
Sure. Currently, we do have a full-day program that's been in existence since 2008 called Great Beginnings, or actually it might be earlier than 2008, but it's been a while that we've had Great Beginnings, which is offering for students entering into kindergarten an opportunity to have full-day experience, but it's based on looking at students' results on our full-day screening process in the summer, and then invitation to participate for those students in our full-day program. So it is not open to all. It is an invitation to the parents, and some parents may choose not to have their students participate and may elect to be in the half-day program. And that is one class, one section of full-day Great Beginnings in each of our 4 elementary schools at this time.
Okay, if we were to move to a full-day program, would that program continue to exist?
No, that program, those students that would have been eligible for a Great Beginnings will be now in the full-day program. All students would receive full-day opportunities, and so those students would be in the full-day sections that would be in each of the elementary schools.
Great, thank you. Let's dive a little bit more into specific areas. Parents are wondering about things like lunch and recess, and even whether or not their students would have the opportunity to take a nap during the day. Mrs. Beck, as we look ahead, how do you anticipate that those things will be addressed in the schedule for the day?
And as Dr. O'Toole shared, we are working with the kindergarten teachers as well as the building principals to really look at a schedule that's developmentally appropriate for 5-year-olds. And as we've shared briefly, our kindergarten students would have an opportunity for recess or unstructured play outdoors or perhaps indoors, depending on the weather, both in the morning and the afternoon, as well as they would have a lunchtime, just as our 1st through 5th graders do. That lunchtime may be slightly extended to support 5-year-olds in getting into the lunchroom, navigating the line, opening their milk or lemonade containers, those types of things to support them and giving them the time to eat. And then they would also have a lunch recess, as our other students do as well. And as Dr. O'Toole mentioned, we would provide time for not only that outdoor play and that unstructured play, but also time in the classroom to allow them an opportunity to practice the academic skills in a play setting. So such as navigating or experiencing a school store, or building with Legos and those types of things, and designing airplanes and different structures that they can then write about later or discuss with their friends. The other piece too that Dr. O'Toole mentioned is that throughout the day, students would have a special each day. And that special right now currently in the half-day program is about 25 minutes. With a full day, with the potential for a full day program, we could offer a special that's 45 minutes long. So students would experience a longer length of time in the art classroom, in PE, to get some of those movement breaks. And the other piece too, specific to your question around nap time, while we won't offer potentially a nap time for students, what we will offer, and what currently happens in many of our full-day programs now in Great Beginnings, is an opportunity throughout the day to have some quiet reflection time, and to even implement some very simple mindfulness breathing strategies to help students kind of calm their nervous system, relax, and then enter into the next portion of their day.
Okay, so for parents who have concerns about adding curriculum for 5-year-olds, I think what I hear you saying is that it's not really adding more, it's adding additional time for the things we already do to be enriched or enhanced. Is that accurate?
Yes, and as has already been mentioned, I mean, really, with the opportunity for full day, it really does give us the gift of time, so that we would not be adding anything more academic, but allowing students within Reader's Workshop more time in books to practice the strategies their teacher has been modeling, or more time to write about maybe the Lego creation they built during that playtime, but really to have a sustained amount of time to engage in those literacy activities, as well as more time to navigate with math manipulatives or apply their math skills in for instance, a school store or another type of play activity. So it's really thinking about what play opportunities can we provide for students where they can apply the academics that we've always taught, you know, into a more real world or 5-year-old real world play-based setting.
I think that addresses needs in the curriculum itself, but Dr. O'Toole, could you talk to us a little bit about what steps would need to be taken to prepare for and then implement a program as soon as 2019-20?
Right, so we've already started the conversations, at least to explore with our kindergarten teachers. They would be heavily involved in the process to examine the best way to provide the curriculum that Mrs. Beck has already described. And so once the board makes a decision in February, we would work with our kindergarten teachers to begin the process of now putting in place the structures and having them work with us to design the activities that would be implemented for the next school year. We would go through professional development with them and work with them on any additional resources that they identify we may need to purchase for their classrooms to be able to do some of the things that Mrs. Beck described with the play activities or within the developmental play with the school store or anything to that effect, if that's where we're headed. So we would be working with our kindergarten teachers from the time of the decision until through the summer to anticipate the needs that they have and to begin the implementation process.
And how are we addressing the concern that we hear from some parents about 5 full days is just too rigorous for a 5-year-old? What supports or structures will be in place to help with that transition? And are there things that parents can do at home to also help in that transition to a full day?
Absolutely. I think that for all of our students, we see that when the school year starts, as well as many of our teachers have noted, that it takes time, those first 4 to 6 weeks that school starts, to really build that stamina back up from the summer. So I think we'll make sure, as we've talked about, to provide those play opportunities and to balance that time for academics with that time for play. There may be some additional outdoor time in those first 4 to 6 weeks to allow students to move and to kind of reacclimate to that school setting. I know that all of our kindergarten teachers as well keep in touch with parents. So that homeschool communication will be important throughout that period, with the kindergarten teacher coaching into, here are some, things you can do at home, perhaps a slightly earlier bedtime if students are more tired or, needing some support in acclimating. The other thing too that I think parents can do, and has been talked about in some of our other panel discussions, is really just spending some time reading with their children, talking what that school will look like, in terms of riding the bus and, watching in the neighborhood even this spring about the bus comes around the neighborhood, kind of getting a sense of where will the bus stop be, those types of things, and just navigating through those typical kind of back to school conversations, as well as, again, as we've shared, reading aloud with their child, having conversations, recognizing letters on signs as you go to Wawa or as you go to Wegmans, noticing that W, and having conversations around letters and really simple math conversations. So if you're looking to count out Oreos or you're looking to count out slices of apples, how many are you counting? And counting with your child. So really just supporting those really beginning numeracy and literacy skills so that they feel more comfortable when they step into the classroom in the fall.
Great, thank you. As we wrap up, Dr. Speaker Polubinski, could you just sort of give our community a sense of timeline between now and February, what they can expect to see, and how they'll be asked to engage with us in this process?
Absolutely. As was shared by many folks this morning, speaking about what we have been doing and a lot of the visits of our neighboring districts, those will continue because always sharing best practice is always very helpful. Our timeline moving forward, as the forms are completed, a survey will be available to all community members, whether or not they have children in the district or have children that have already gone through kindergarten or possibly do not have children in the district but are taxpayers. That survey will be available. It will be available online. It will also be available in many of the establishments that many of our community members attend, doctor's offices, libraries, places of business. Also, in the monthly newsletter that is actually sent from your office, Ms. Blake, to home, that there will be an opportunity for them to also engage in that survey. The survey will be open beginning tomorrow, and it will run through December 12th through December 21st. And folks, we really encourage as many as possible to engage in that survey. The survey information then will then be presented to the board. And at each of our board meetings, and this actually started in November, each of our board meetings has been dedicated, a percentage of that time has been dedicated to presentations related to this topic. So the first presentation dealt with the financial implications in the feasibility study, both financially and place, facility. Moving into the research study that was then done and presented at the December meeting. The 2 meetings in January will also include presentations related to full-day kindergarten, as well as the first meeting in February. The decision will be made by the board at the voting meeting in February, and based upon that decision, we will then gear up more for the planning if in fact it will be adjusted to full-day kindergarten, or if we will continue moving on with our half-day programming. I really encourage community members and parents to look at the website at GVSD/FDK to engage or to be provided with resources. If there are any questions or comments, please also fdk@gvsd.org. If you go onto our website, the resources are all there, but that's an opportunity to actually email any questions or comments that you may have. As we shared in many of the forums, it's been brought to our attention that through social media forums, there are conversations happening, and we just don't want to rely on the potential that we may see those comments or questions. We would really like to have all comments, questions, or any feedback really relayed through the resources available through the district, which again, fdk@gvsd.org, or on our website, GVSD/FDK. All of those resources will be available, as well as the presentations from the board meetings.
Great. Thank you to our panel members for providing this information today, and thank you to our community for joining us. As a reminder, questions can be emailed to fdk@gvsd.org. Thank you.